Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Flores here with the Pay-Per-View Wrestling Podcast. Today, I cover Roadblock End of the Line 2016. Alright, perfect. This is the Pay-Per-View Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Mark Flores. Tonight we have a very exciting episode where I go into the non-exciting details of Roadblock 2016. And you know what? It's not a fault of WWE per se, simply because they're at a point where they have exhausted all the booking options to certain matches. And I'll go into more detail with that a little later on in the show. But as of right now, let's go into the commercial spot provided by Game Swappers. Hello, this is Mark Flores from the Mark F Podcast channel, here to let you know that this podcast episode is brought to you by Game Swappers. Come on down to Game Swappers, located at 4520 Holt Boulevard in Montclair, California, to buy, sell, and trade your current and retro video games from Nintendo Entertainment System to the PS4. Keep in mind that if you share any one of my podcast episodes through any form of social media, you'll get 10% off your entire purchase, or you'll get 10% more towards your retro game trade-ins. Follow Game Swappers on Instagram at GAMESWAPPERS. That's GAMESWAPPERS. Game Swappers. Buy, sell, and trade. Also, huge shout out to the Geeks Gamers Facebook group for letting me post this podcast on their very popular wrestling page. Also, if you guys get a chance, make sure to check out geeksgamers.com. That's geeksgamers.com. Okay, guys, so we have Roadblock 2016, and the first match that they hit us off with is The New Day versus Cesaro and Sheamus. Now, 483 days in, now that the New Day were able to keep these titles going. Keep them retaining. They were retaining. They became faces first, then heels, and back to faces. And now we're hit with The New Day versus Cesaro and Sheamus. The New Day come out with a great, hilarious intro banter. Very great opening segment before they even enter the ring. But then as soon as the bell rings, Cesaro starts off quick to put the match in high gear. Both guys, both Cesaro and Sheamus, were showing off their tag team moves, and a great spot that I wanted to mention too is that Big E caught Sheamus midair into a running powerbomb. That to me takes a lot of strength, especially knowing the fact that Sheamus doesn't. Sheamus isn't really extremely light. He's a heavy set kind of guy. He's very stacked himself. So for Big E to catch Sheamus and then for Big E to actually push him and get him into an actual running powerbomb was quite impressive. Another thing that I wanted to get out of the way too is that Cesaro possesses one of the most underrated moves in WWE as of right now. The corkscrew uppercut is one of the most underrated moves in WWE. I can't stress this enough, simply because what Cesaro does to make sure that he gets enough airtime to calculate the fact that he needs to corkscrew turn in midair, and for him to actually pull it off near his opponent takes a great amount of work from Cesaro himself, but also it's also the dance partner that he's doing it with. You know, it takes a lot for both people to communicate and to actually get the spot done correctly. So definitely good to see that Cesaro is still using this move, and I'm glad to see that he gets a consistent pop from this move itself. Another thing to compliment Cesaro with is that he was able to do the neutralizer from a small package position that he had Kofi Kingston in. And now we go into the finish of the match. So nearing the end of the match, Cesaro feints a tag to Sheamus. And then Cesaro comes back out, gets hit with a Trouble in Paradise. Kofi thinks that he is the legal man and starts tying up Kofi Kingston. But then that still makes Sheamus the legal man, because Sheamus is the one who attempted the tag in. So then Cesaro pretends to come out, gets hit with the Trouble in Paradise. Then Sheamus comes out with the roll up, gets the roll up with the 1, 2, 3, now Cesaro and Sheamus, who still don't have a realistic tag team name, are now the tag team champions. So Roadblock is now at a point here where we now get a good reaction for the first match. We have Cesaro and Sheamus having the gold around their waist, and now that the New Day are 483 days out of having their tag team titles, now they beat Demolition's record, which is good because I believe that you needed a new marketable team to advertise this new record. That's why WWE has all these new guys with newer records than all the old timers, because their relevancy has now expired. The only record that I can be pretty confident that they're never going to duplicate is when the 2,000 plus days that Bruno Sammartino actually held the title. They had certain circumstances where they had to have Bruno hold the actual title, so we can't take anything away from Bruno Sammartino at that point. Just due to the longevity standpoint, you have to be pretty confident in saying that they'll never ever touch that consecutive title reign days from Bruno Sammartino. But now we're looking at the New Day here, and so now 483 days out, now they don't have the titles. And where does the New Day go from here? Well, nothing is stopping them from doing anything interesting. I mean, they are, as a whole, very entertaining. I don't think that WWE is going to be splitting them up come till probably post-WrestleMania, probably to develop some singles feuds or have Kofi Kingston go to 205 Live to bring some relevancy into there. That would be a good idea. I think Big E and Xavier Woods have a lot to offer the WWE as far as from a singles perspective too, but you could probably have them team up for a long time. I mean, there's no real reason to split these guys up. These guys, their merch, they sell merch. I mean, they got the whole package there. So it was a very interesting match. It was very fast paced. I thought that Cesaro is always going to be the shining star out of all the matches that he's in, simply because his work ethic shows through. And then add that to the fact that Sheamus is able to do what he does on a regular basis consistently is all great. Plus, you add the fact that the New Day, extremely over. These guys know how to work together. Both of these guys collectively, Cesaro and Sheamus and the New Day, were able to put on a great match. I'm happy for Cesaro and Sheamus. I'm happy for Cesaro to have another title on his waist, so that's great to see. There's realistically no downside. There could be downsides from the fans for having the New Day hold the title so long, but this change is rather good, especially in the eyes of fans who want to see Cesaro and Sheamus hold the tag team titles. So the next match that we have in this match card here was Braun Strowman and Sami Zayn. So I was having a conversation yesterday at Retrospect, the event held by Game Swappers, and I was talking to a couple good fans and good friends of mine. Luis, I do remember his name. We were talking about the Sami Zayn Braun Strowman match, and we looked at this match from a perspective of, well, what does WWE do with these two guys pending the outcome of this match? What does WWE do after Sami Zayn takes the victory? Or how's WWE going to take this if Braun Strowman takes the victory? Well, WWE's booking had a decision to make, and now, so if Braun Strowman was able to beat Sami Zayn, make him quit or pin him within 10 minutes, then Braun Strowman gets the victory. If Sami Zayn is able to last the 10 minutes, then everything's all squared away. Sami Zayn takes the victory. Braun Strowman isn't necessarily pinned cleanly. He didn't tap out. So the way this match went, where we had Sami Zayn and Braun Strowman go at it for a little bit in the beginning, but then you realize that Braun Strowman was the controller of the match. There comes this spot where Mick Foley comes out with a white towel, and I had a lot of people ask me, why is Mick Foley coming out with a white towel? Well, the thing is that you still have to give visual cues to people that are in the arena. The people in the arena can't hear the audio going into the microphones on the cameras. So you need a visual representation of what Mick Foley wants to do in this ring. So Mick Foley comes out with Sami Zayn and Braun Strowman, and Braun Strowman's telling telling Mick Foley that he brought it upon himself that Sami Zayn is in this position. Now, Mick Foley then says, I'm going to throw in the towel, and then Sami Zayn tells him no. So then, we all know that that's out there to kill time. Now we're at this time deficit where Sami Zayn has to still last the amount of time. So the pressure's on for Sami, and Sami ends up lasting that long. So Sami is the victor out of this situation. So it's good for Sami Zayn because he didn't lose to Braun Strowman, so his actual reputation doesn't get squandered. But he does take a victory over Braun Strowman. Now, in Braun Strowman's case, he didn't get pinned cleanly by Sami Zayn, so it's more of a fact that he couldn't do it in time, which isn't going to take anything away from his stock. And the best thing about this is it's not taking away from Sami Zayn's stock either. So that's the thing that I was worried about in the beginning, before this match even started, was, well, I thought that what if Braun Strowman beat him in time? That would take Sami Zayn's stock down a little bit, but I'm glad that they had this kind of decision where both of these guys didn't necessarily lose that much out of this match per se. Sami Zayn took a lot more out of this match than Braun Strowman did, but Braun Strowman didn't lose a lot from the outcome of this match either. Let's see the next match that we had here tonight. Yes, we had we had Seth Rollins versus Chris Jericho. So the big downside to this is that we've seen Chris Jericho face Seth Rollins multiple times. And it got very frustrating. Raw after Raw after Raw, we saw Chris Jericho fight Seth Rollins. Now we're at Roadblock, and now the ante is pretty much upped a little bit in terms of the pay-per-view caliber match that they have to have. So they do pull that off. It was a very exciting match, but the only thing is that this match gets a little redundant because we've seen it multiple times. There's a few good spots to mention out here. The Seth Rollins had a blockbuster from the second turnbuckle, and we had Chris Jericho do the lion salt as well. I can give compliments to Chris Jericho and Seth Rollins for is this. Chris Jericho right now is at a point where he's revolutionized his character over and over and over again. He's been in the business almost 30 years, and it's beautiful to see that he's able to reinvent himself multiple times. Now we have him super over as a heel with the list of Jericho, the catchphrases and the sayings. It's all beautiful. The only downside is that this match didn't involve any high tier items such as a heavyweight title or number one contendership. That was it. This is just a regular match to fill time, essentially. But what people would you rather have than these two? Seth Rollins does put on a great match night after night. Chris Jericho is always good because he's able to use not necessarily a lot of movesets, but he's able to gain a lot of heat within the match. You could hear during every grapple and every rest hold that Chris Jericho's always yelling. He's always yelling. He's like, "You had enough, Seth. You've had enough." He's always yelling and stuff. That's great. That's great to obtain heat during that match for the audience inside the arena and for the people watching at home, because you could clearly hear that when you're at home, or B when you're at the arena. So great. Using great psychology within this match. I could say, oh great, we've seen this match 100 fucking times, but you have Chris Jericho facing Seth Rollins. For the people watching there in the arena for the first time, they could take that and say, you know what, I've seen these two guys fight. Because you're not going to see that a lot more times from Chris Jericho. I mean, Chris Jericho doesn't necessarily need to be in these kind of matches week after week. I mean, the backlog of his accolades speak for himself. So it's great to see Chris Jericho versus Seth Rollins in this match. The only downside to it is that you didn't see anyone. You didn't see anything up for grabs. Essentially, we had the finish with Seth Rollins pedigreeing Chris Jericho after Kevin Owens tries to come in and help Chris Jericho, but then he ends up screwing up. Seth Rollins comes in for the pin, and Seth Rollins beats Chris Jericho. The next match that we had was the Brian Kendrick versus Rich Swann and TJ Perkins triple threat for the Cruiserweight title. I love the Cruiserweight Classic. I do think it needs a little bit of work. I like how WWE separates the identity of 205 Live, the Cruiserweight Classic, etc. by you changing the ropes, doing all of what they can to make sure that this is its own identity. I like the Brian Kendrick. I think he's a great heel. He's doing great work as of now. Rich Swann. I think Rich Swann, out of the whole group of 205 Live, has the most charisma, has the most potential to be something of heavyweight contendership. I think he can go for bigger titles the quickest out of all these guys. TJ Perkins, the first winner of the Cruiserweight Classic. He was the first inaugural Cruiserweight champion. Again, he has a lot of potential himself, but I don't think it's up to the same potential I see in Rich Swann. I think Rich Swann has so much charisma. I think his glass ceiling is a lot higher than that of TJ Perkins. In the beginning of this match, you do see an early botch by Rich Swann. It does take Brian Kendrick a little bit because it looked like it left the Brian Kendrick a little fuzzy, so he was out of the match for a little bit, and this match went rather quickly. We had also a quick point to mention, I forgot because it starts in very, very in the beginning. We had Austin Aries do his pay-per-view debut as a heel commentator in the commentary booth with Corey Graves and Michael Cole. Man, that was amazing. Just to have Austin Aries in a main pay-per-view that's not associated with NXT, that's not associated with the Cruiserweight Classic, 205 Live, that's great to see. Austin Aries' banter with Michael Cole and Corey Graves was amazing to hear. It was a great compliment to this match. Very great to see. So this match was fast-paced, of course. TJ Perkins, it was mostly TJ Perkins and Rich Swann going at it for a little bit. But then, out of what we had here, we had the finish of the match where Rich Swann finishes Brian Kendrick off with the super kick to get the pin. And yet we had Rich Swann retain. So then after that, we had Neville come out. Neville debuts after months and months and months of not being shown on television. As we all knew, the last time we saw Neville, he was a babyface. So then he comes out with a smile, walks down the ramp, comes into the ring, and goes for a beeline for Rich Swann, and immediately starts hitting him. Oh my goodness. Neville starts turning heel. This is amazing. So the only unfortunate thing about Neville being heel is that his moveset is impressive. So his moveset is babyface all the way. He doesn't necessarily have a heel moveset per se. He doesn't have that at all, actually. His finisher is all for the appeal of someone wanting to see it in a match. So I hope that WWE has tweaked the game a little bit within Neville to see where he can go as far as acquiring new moves to become a little more heelish. I hope so. I think that Rich Swann and Neville are going to have a great program. And this is what I was saying all along. As long as you have a talent outside of the 205 roster come in, I was thinking Kofi Kingston was going to be part of this, but hopefully they have bigger things planned for him with the New Day. But someone like Neville is great because he's an outside star coming into 205 Live, essentially invading 205 Live to disrupt whatever's going on with Rich Swann. Great. Now there's a backstory to it too because throughout the beginning of this heel turn that Neville was doing to Rich Swann, Michael Cole was repeating that Neville was training Rich Swann. So this is good stuff. So I know that there's going to be a lot of build up to where Neville's saying, well, you've gotten a lot more accolades than I have so quickly. I'm jealous because I've trained you. Master and the Apprentice. Great stuff. I could see a lot of potentials for this. The match, the three-way match to me was a little short, but knowing the time constraints of what they have, they only can have this pay-per-view last under 3 hours, so I could see why this one went rather quick. I did like the exchange that TJ Perkins did. He was able to get to revert a grapple into the knee bar. The only unfortunate thing is that we didn't see the standing 450, the jumping 450 splash from Rich Swann. The great spot of this whole match was Rich Swann was able to do a double Kinrana, which is basically a Hurricane Rana with two people that he flips over. I thought that was impressive. Big props to Rich Swann for doing that. The next match that we had on the docket here was here it is. Now we had Sasha Banks versus Charlotte, this 30-minute Iron Man match. Man, we've seen this match more than, 7 times? This Sasha Banks Charlotte match. This the Hell in a Cell was supposed to be the one to nip it in the bud, but it didn't. It's unfortunate, but man, this match was good. This match became even better after the tie, because now we had a lot of great ring psychology where Charlotte was focusing in on the injury of Sasha Banks. A couple key notes to point out is that Sasha got the first win, Charlotte had the second, and then, let me see. I had Sasha. Oh yeah, because then you had Charlotte put Sasha Banks at the end, because it was at 1-1. It was actually at we had 1-2, I believe, and then Sasha Banks taps out to tie it up at the have Charlotte tied up at the last minute. Anyway, we had a tie in overtime nonetheless, and we had Sasha. I think what ended up happening is that Charlotte gives Sasha a back body drop, but then Charlotte's hand ends up hitting Sasha Banks' nose. And then Sasha starts bleeding out of her nose because her nose is busted now at this point. So then a lot of great stuff ends up happening where Charlotte ends up putting Sasha Banks in a hold to where she has to give up, and she's bleeding out of her mouth. She's saying no, she's bleeding, and the blood's getting into her teeth. This is great stuff to see. But the only downside to this is that Michael Cole and the announce team didn't focus in on it. If they did, this would have built up a lot of tension within the audience to see that, to the audience at home on the network. It would have been great to have a lot more emphasis on that. But I just think another downside to this match is that this rivalry that we have has worn its welcome. We've seen it many a times, and it's just not really that fun to see anymore. Call it what you will, but the match was what is. I mean, it was pretty predictable because going into this match, Charlotte has this undefeated pay-per-view record, and we all know that Sasha Banks only has won the title at a Raw. So what do you think was going to happen? I mean, the predictability is unfortunate to see, because I don't think what they want to do is they want to have Charlotte have this undefeated pay-per-view streak, and they want an ultimate babyface to beat her. So I think that Bayley might take that at WrestleMania. But in the sake of Sasha Banks is that she's equally as good as Charlotte, but yet they're giving her the third degree by not having her beat Charlotte at a pay-per-view. They just give her the Monday Night Raw. I don't know. I just don't. You lose credibility as a viable opponent if you don't beat Charlotte at a pay-per-view now, because that record is what they're building up at. So what can WWE do from here? Okay, so now we can just nip it in the bud that Sasha Banks and Charlotte are not going to be fighting anytime soon anymore. Great. So then this sets up Sasha Banks with Nia Jax, because Nia Jax is like an in-between, and Sasha Banks is a babyface. So then Charlotte can go against Dana Brooke or Bayley. Hopefully, we could see some of that stuff going on. I just don't understand how now Charlotte is a 4-time women's champion. The only thing I can see reasoning for that is that WWE is going to have Charlotte be the female embodiment of Ric Flair, to where she has the title like 16 plus times. That's logical. It's good to see an emulation of Ric Flair later. This is like a female reboot of Ric Flair, which is good to see. She shares some of the characteristics of Flair, the robes, the silver hair, the flashy wardrobe, the cruel heel tactics. Great to see that. But to do it at such a fast pace before almost 2 years ends up coming up, that's pretty quick. And you could see it's pretty obvious that they're trying to do that. It's a great downside to it. It's a very unfortunate downside, as a matter of fact. Sorry. But who knows? Who knows what we'll see come down the line as far as who's going to be feuding with Charlotte and Sasha Banks. So the next match that we had was the main event. We have Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns. And wow, to me that this match had lost my attention 75% of the time. It wasn't very entertaining. Both of these guys are powerhouses, but you have Kevin Owens with the most dense moveset out of the two, and Kevin Owens isn't going to be doing anything flashy anytime soon with that, especially with Roman Reigns, because you can't really do much with Roman Reigns because he's almost 300 plus pounds. It's hard to do maneuvers that he'd want to do with him in that regard. But nonetheless, what ended up happening at nearing this end of the match was you have Chris Jericho come out, give the code breaker to Kevin Owens. So I, at this point, think that this is going to be a heel turn. So then Kevin Owens loses. Kevin Owens loses to. Oh no! I'm sorry. So Chris Jericho gives the code breaker to Kevin Owens. The ref calls it. So the ref calls this match, and now we're left to where, okay, so now this sets up Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens for the title, or sets up a feud Roman Reigns and Chris Jericho. No. Now they're still friends after the fact because Chris Jericho just disqualified Kevin Owens, and they come up and then they embrace, basically symbolizing that they're still friends. Pretty confusing. You could have booked this a little bit different, to where Chris Jericho gives the codebreaker to Roman Reigns, and at a point where Kevin Owens is very weak and it looks like he's done for, and then Chris Jericho comes in and just DQs the match. That would have been better to do. I don't know why you would tease the fans to see a heel turn, like a face turn from Chris Jericho. It just didn't make sense to me. It'd be a lot more sensible for Chris Jericho to not be teased as a face when he comes out and code breaks Kevin Owens. Very confusing stuff from the booking perspective. I don't know why they ended up doing that, but who knows. Overall, this Roadblock was very average. I hold Roadblock in the same light, a little bit lower than Fastlane, a little bit lower than Elimination Chamber, because it just wasn't. It was one of those cookie cutter pay-per-views that you could see the decisions a mile away. Just a little unfortunate to see, but now are the important storylines are going to start coming up. Yes, there is a bright light at the end of this pay-per-view tunnel. We're going to see a lot more storylines develop to Royal Rumble and then to WrestleMania. Great. I'm very happy for that. Starting the new year, we're getting a new batch, 2017. I'm excited to see what 2017 is going to hold. And we're coming up on a year anniversary of the Pay-Per-View Wrestling Podcast. I can't thank you guys enough for tuning in to all my various predictions. If you guys have any other questions or any comments, concerns, you feel free to tweet me at Mark F's Podcast or catch me on Instagram at Mark F's Modern Life. Once again, big shout out to geeksgamers.com for letting me have post this on their various social medias. Other than that, you guys have a good night. This has been Mark with the review on Roadblock 2016 End of the Line. Thank you.